No one expected the groom to freeze at the altar, not in a cathedral filled with white lilies, flashing cameras, and whispered envy, not when the music was already fading into vows. But then an old woman stepped forward from the back of the church. Her clothes were worn, her hands trembled, and she leaned heavily on a cane. Security moved to drag her away, but before they could touch her, she locked eyes with the billionaire groom, Malik Thorne, and held up a single, crumbling piece of yellowed paper. Malik's hands shook. The wedding stopped breathing. And in that terrifying silence, a secret buried for 10 years threatened to destroy everything he thought he knew. Before we begin this story, tell us in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is in your country. And if stories about kindness, destiny, and hidden truths move your heart, please subscribe to this channel. You won't want to miss what happens next. Long before the white flowers filled the cathedral, and before the rumors of a billionaire's wedding took over the city, Malik Thorne lived by one unbreakable rule. No one expected the wedding of the decade to end in silence. Not when the groom was Malik Thorne, a man whose net worth could buy entire city blocks. Not when the bride was Vanessa Cole, a woman who had spent a year curating every petal, every light, and every guest list for the specific moment. The cathedral was packed. The air smelled of expensive perfume and anticipation. But history isn't made in ballrooms or cathedrals. It's made in the quiet moments that nobody watches. And to understand why Malik Thorne froze at the altar, we have to go back to a dusty street corner months before the wedding bells ever rang. Malik Thorne lived by a strict routine. He was a man who believed that discipline was the only barrier between success and chaos. He had drivers, of course. He had a fleet of cars that cost more than most people earned in a lifetime. But every morning at 6:30 a.m., Malik drove himself to his office in the city center. It was his time to think. It was the only time the world wasn't asking him for something. Or so he thought. His route took him past the old transit center on 5th Street. It was a rough area, the kind of place where the city's neglect was visible in the cracked sidewalks and flickering streetlights. Every morning, without fail, the traffic light at the corner would turn red. And every morning, Malik would look out his window and see her. They called her Mama ESI. She wasn't begging, not really. She sat on a plastic crate with a dignity that didn't match her surroundings. She wore a faded head wrap and a coat that had seen too many winters. She didn't shout at passers-by. She didn't hold up a cardboard sign with a sad story written in marker. She just sat there, hands folded in her lap, watching the cars roll by. The first time Malik actually spoke to her, it was raining. A cold, gray drizzle that made the city look like a blurred painting. His window was cracked open to let in some fresh air. "Excuse me, son," a voice drifted in. It wasn't loud. It wasn't desperate. It was just steady. Malik turned. Mama ESI was standing by his car. Up close, her face was a map of deep lines and history. Her eyes were dark and incredibly sharp. "I don't have any cash," Malik said automatically. It was a lie, and they both knew it. Malik always carried cash. She didn't get angry. She didn't plead. She just nodded at the dashboard where his wallet was sitting. "I don't need much," she said. "Just $11. Malik paused. $11? It was such a specific number. Usually, people ask for a 5 or a 10 or just some change. But $11 felt calculated. It felt necessary. "Why 11? Malik asked, his curiosity getting the better of him. "Because that is the price of the day," she replied simply. Malik handed her a 20. "Keep the change," he said, rolling up the window as the light turned green. No, she called out as he pulled away. I only need 11. He watched in his rearview mirror as she walked to a nearby vendor, bought something small, and handed the remaining $9 to a young boy sitting on the curb. Malik frowned. He had made millions by understanding the value of money, but he didn't understand that transaction at all. The next day, she was there again. The light turned red. Malik rolled down the window. $11? He asked before she could speak. If you have it to spare, son, she said. He handed her exactly $11 this time. Thank you, she said. May the blessings you give return to you. This became their ritual. Every morning, Malik stopped. Every morning. He handed Mama ESI $11. She never asked for more. She never engaged in small talk about the weather or sports. She just took the money, offered a quiet blessing, and watched him drive away. It should have been annoying. Malik was a busy man. He was closing deals that shifted the stock market. He was planning a wedding that was going to be featured in every major magazine. But strangely, this 30-second interaction became the anchor of his day. In a world where everyone wanted his influence, his connections, or his signature, Mama ESI just wanted $11. One morning, Malik decided to watch her. He parked his car a block away and waited. He wanted to know where the money went. Was it alcohol? Was it gambling? He needed to know if he was being played. He watched as Mama ESI stood up slowly, clutching her lower back. She walked 2 streets over to a small, run-down pharmacy. She went inside and came out 5 minutes later with a tiny white paper bag. Then she walked to a bakery, bought a single plain roll, and sat on a bench to eat it. That was it. Medicine and bread. Malik felt a strange pang in his chest. It was guilt mixed with something else, recognition. He looked at her lonely figure on the bench, and for a split second, he didn't see a stranger. He saw a shadow of someone he used to know, someone he hadn't let himself think about in years. His phone buzzed, snapping him out of the trance. It was Vanessa. "Where are you?" she asked, her voice sharp. "The caterers are waiting. We need to pick the appetizers for the reception." "I'm coming," Malik said, starting the car. He took one last look at Mama ESI. She was breaking off pieces of her roll and feeding them to the pigeons. Malik drove away, but the image of her stayed with him, sitting in the passenger seat of his mind, quiet and heavy. He didn't know it yet, but that $11 was buying him a ticket to a truth that would tear his life apart. As the wedding date drew closer, the pressure on Malik began to mount. Vanessa Cole was not just planning a ceremony. She was orchestrating a coronation. Every detail had to be a statement of their success. She was beautiful, ambitious, and fiercely protective of the image they were building together. To Vanessa, Malik's past was a backstory to be polished, not a place to visit. One evening, over a dinner of grilled salmon and vintage wine, Malik made the mistake of mentioning the woman at the bus stop. "You give her money every single day?" Vanessa asked, putting down her fork. Her brow furrowed in that way that meant she was calculating a risk. "It's just $11, Vanessa," Malik said, pouring himself more water. "It's nothing." "It's not the amount, Malik. It's the precedent," she said, wiping her mouth elegantly. "You're a public figure now. People talk. If word gets out that Malik Thorne is handing out cash on 5th Street, you'll have a line of beggars stretching to the highway. It's unsafe." "She's an old woman," Malik argued, feeling a defensive heat rise in his neck. "She buys medicine and bread." "That's it. You checked." Vanessa raised an eyebrow. "I checked." Vanessa sighed, reaching across the table to take his hand. Her skin was soft, her manicure perfect. Look, baby, I love that you have a big heart. That's why I'm marrying you. But we have to have boundaries. People like that, they become dependent. They latch on. She hasn't latched on, Malik said, pulling his hand away slightly. She doesn't even know my name. She knows your car, Vanessa countered. She knows your suit. She knows you're good for it. Just promise me you'll stop. We have a foundation for charity work. We do things the proper way. Structured. Vetted. Malik didn't promise. He couldn't explain it to Vanessa, but seeing Mama I felt like visiting a grave he hadn't marked yet. It reminded him of his mother, Lena. Lena Thorne had raised Malik on her own in a neighborhood not far from where Mama ESI sat. She had cleaned office buildings at night and washed clothes during the day. Malik remembered the smell of bleach on her hands and the way she would count out coins on the kitchen table every Friday. He remembered the fear in her eyes when the rent was due. Lena had died 10 years ago. Malik was just starting to make real money then, but he hadn't been fast enough to save her. She had gotten sick, a simple infection that turned into something complicated because she waited too long to see a doctor. She waited because she didn't have the money. Giving Mama ESI that $11 felt like paying a debt to a ghost. The next morning, Vanessa decided to ride with him. My car's in the shop, she lied smoothly. Malik knew her car was fine, but he didn't argue. As they approached the intersection, Malik felt his heart rate pick up. The light turned red. Mama ESI was there. She stood up when she saw the car, a small smile on her face. Then she saw Vanessa in the passenger seat. Mama ESI's smile didn't drop, but her eyes shifted. She seemed to study Vanessa with a piercing intensity. Malik rolled down the window. "Good morning, Mama." "Morning, son," she said. She looked past him to Vanessa. "Good morning, daughter." Vanessa didn't smile. She just gave a stiff nod. "Hello." Malik handed over the bills. Mama ESI took them, her fingers brushing his. "Be careful what you build, son," she whispered, low enough that only Malik could hear. "A house on sand won't hold the rain." "What did she say?" Vanessa asked as they drove away. "Nothing," Malik said. "Just a blessing." "She looked at me like she knew me." Vanessa shuddered, checking her makeup in the visor mirror. It was creepy. "Malik, seriously, you need to stop this. It's bad energy before the wedding. She's just a struggling woman. Vanessa, not a witch." "She's a reminder of a life you left behind," Vanessa said, her voice dropping to a whisper. "And we are moving forward, aren't we?" Malik gripped the steering wheel tight. "We are." But for the next week, the interaction changed. Mama ESI stopped taking the money immediately. Instead, she would ask him a question. "Are you sleeping well, son? Is your heart light today? Do you know the difference between a price and a value?" Malik answered politely, but the questions dug under his skin. It felt like she was interviewing him for a job he didn't know he applied for. And all the while, he noticed she was looking thinner. Her movements were slower. The walk to the pharmacy seemed to take longer each day. Then, 3 days before the wedding, Malik pulled at the corner. The light turned red. He reached for his wallet, but the plastic crate was empty. Mama ESI was gone. The absence of a stranger shouldn't feel like a missing limb, but for Malik, it did. He stared at the empty street corner. A stray candy wrapper blew across the sidewalk, where her feet usually rested. The light turned green and the car behind him honked. But Malik didn't move for a full 5 seconds. Maybe she's sick, he thought. Maybe she finally took a day off. But deep down, he knew it wasn't that simple. Mama ESI was as consistent as the sunrise. If she wasn't there, something was wrong. He drove to work, but his mind was completely useless. During a budget meeting for a new high-rise development, he found himself doodling the number 11 on his notepad. By lunchtime, he couldn't take it anymore. He canceled his afternoon appointments. He told his assistant he had a tuxedo fitting, got into his car, and drove back to Fifth Street. He parked and got out. He felt ridiculous. A billionaire in a bespoke Italian suit walking around a crumbling transit center asking about a homeless woman. He approached a vendor who sold newspapers nearby. "Excuse me," Malik said. "The woman who sits there. Mama ESI. Have you seen her?" The vendor, an older man with cloudy eyes, shook his head. "Not today. She wasn't here yesterday either. Do you know where she lives?" The vendor laughed, a dry, hacking sound. "Lives? She stays at the shelter on Pine sometimes, or the one down by the river, but mostly she keeps to herself. Why do you care, rich man?" She's a friend," Malik said. "A friend you don't know," the vendor muttered. "Check the county hospital. That's where the old ones go when they stop showing up. The county hospital." The words made Malik's stomach turn. That was where his mother, Lena, had died. It was a place of long lines, fluorescent lights, and the smell of despair. He drove there. The waiting room was overflowing. People were coughing, crying, or staring blankly at the TV mounted on the wall. Malik walked up to the reception desk. The nurse behind the glass looked exhausted. "I'm looking for a patient," Malik said. "An elderly woman. Goes by Mama ESI. Admitted in the last 2 days." The nurse typed slowly. "I need a legal name, sir. Mama ESI isn't in the system." I don't know her last name," Malik admitted. The nurse gave him a look of pity mixed with annoyance. "I can't help you then. We have 10 Jane does on the 3rd floor alone." Malik stepped back, frustrated. He was used to doors opening for him. He was used to answers. He pulled out his phone to call his private investigator, a man he usually used for corporate background checks. "Darius," Malik said when his friend answered, "I need you to find someone. Fast." "I'm busy with the security detail for your wedding, Malik," Darius said. "We have 300 guests arriving tomorrow." "This is more important," Malik snapped. "Find a woman named ESI. Bus stop on 5th and Main. Check ambulance records for the last 48 hours. I need to know where she is." "Malik, Vanessa's going to kill you if you're distracted right now," Darius warned. "Just do it, Darius." That night, Malik went home to the penthouse he shared with Vanessa. She was in the living room, surrounded by seating charts. "You're late," she said, not looking up. The pastor called. "He wants to go over the vows one last time tomorrow morning." "I'll be there," Malik said, loosening his tie. "Are you okay?" Vanessa looked up finally. "You look pale." "I'm fine. Just work." He went into his study and locked the door. He sat in the dark, thinking about his mother. He opened the bottom drawer of his desk, where he kept a small wooden box, the only things he had left of Lena Thorne. A few photos, her wedding ring, and a stack of old medical bills he had paid off years too late. He picked up a photo of his mother. She was laughing, her head thrown back. She looked strong. His phone buzzed. It was Darius. "I found her," Darius said. "She's at St. Jude's Medical Center, not the county." "But Malik, you're not going to like this. Is she okay?" She's stable, but she's in bad shape. But that's not the weird part. I pulled her file. Her name isn't just ESI. It's ESI Freeman. Malik frowned. So, Freeman was your mother's maiden name, Malik, and she's listed as your mother's aunt on a census record from 30 years ago. Malik dropped the phone. The silence in the room suddenly felt deafening. The woman he had been giving $11 to wasn't a stranger. She was family, and she had been waiting on that corner, watching him, for months. The morning of the wedding was bright and blindingly sunny. It was the kind of day photographers prayed for, but inside the limousine taking him to the cathedral, Malik Thorne felt like he was underwater. The revelation about Mama ESI, his great-aunt ESI, had kept him awake all night. Why hadn't she told him? Why did she only ask for $11? Why had she let him believe she was a stranger? He had tried to go to the hospital that morning, but Vanessa had scheduled a videographer to capture the groom's morning routine. And there were people in his house from 6 a.m. He was trapped in the pageantry of his own life. "You look sharp, brother," Darius said, sitting across from him in the limo. Darius knew the truth now, too. He looked worried. "Did you talk to her?" "I couldn't get away," Malik said, adjusting his cufflinks. They felt like handcuffs. "I sent a nurse from my private team to sit with her. I told him to give her whatever she needs." "Malik, you have to focus," Darius said. "You're about to walk down the aisle. Vanessa is waiting. The mayor is there. Just get through the ceremony. We deal with ESI afterwards." The cathedral was magnificent. White lilies cascaded from the ceiling. A choir was singing softly in the loft. The pews were filled with the city's elite, politicians, business tycoons, celebrities. Malik walked to the front. Standing by the altar, he forced a smile. He shook hands with the pastor. Then the music changed. The heavy wooden doors swung open. Vanessa appeared. She was a vision. Her dress was a masterpiece of lace and silk. She walked slowly, eyes locked on Malik, a triumphant smile on her lips. For a moment, Malik felt the old affection. She was beautiful. She was his partner. Maybe Darius was right. Maybe they could figure this out later. The ceremony began. The pastor spoke about love, about two roads becoming one. Malik tried to listen, but his ears were ringing. "If there is anyone here," the pastor's voice boomed, "who knows of any reason why these two should not be joined in holy matrimony, speak now or forever hold your peace." It is the part of the wedding everyone ignores. It is usually just a formality. The silence that follows is usually comfortable. But this time, the silence was broken. "I speak." The voice was frail, but it cut through the acoustic perfection of the cathedral like a knife. A murmur rippled through the crowd. Heads turned. Malik's heart hammered against his ribs. He looked down the long aisle. Standing at the very back, leaning heavily on a cane, was Mama ESI. She wasn't wearing her faded coat. She was wearing a simple, clean Sunday dress, clearly borrowed, perhaps from a nurse. She looked small against the towering architecture, but she stood tall. Security guards, dressed in black suits, immediately moved toward her. Malik saw one of them reach for her arm. "Don't touch her." Malik's voice shouted before he realized he was speaking. It echoed off the vaulted ceiling. Vanessa turned to him, her eyes wide with shock and fury. "Malik, what are you doing?" she hissed. "It's the beggar woman. Security will handle it." "No," Malik said, stepping off the altar. "Let her come." "Malik." Vanessa grabbed his arm, her nails digging into his suit jacket. "Do not do this." You are humiliating me. She's family, Vanessa, Malik said, his voice shaking. Vanessa froze. What? Malik pulled away from his bride and walked down the aisle. The guests were whispering loudly now. Phones were out, recording. This was the scandal of the year unfolding in real time. Malik reached Mama, ESI. She looked exhausted. Her skin was gray, and she was trembling. You shouldn't be here, Malik said gently. You're sick. I had to come, she wheezed, because today is the day you forget. Forget what? Forget who you are, Mama ESI said. She reached into her pocket. She didn't pull out a weapon or a gift. She pulled out a crumbled, yellowing piece of paper. Read it, Malik. Malik took the paper. It was an invoice, a hospital bill from 10 years ago, from the night his mother died. He scanned the items. Emergency room fee, triage fee, medication, and at the bottom there was a stamp in red ink, denied, and next to it, a handwritten note from an administrator. Payment plan rejected. Patient discharged. Why are you showing me this? Malik asked, tears blurring his vision. Look at the signature. Mama ESI whispered. Malik looked. The signature of the hospital administrator who had sent his mother home to die was sleek and looped. Robert Cole. Malik felt the floor tilt. He looked up at Mama ESI, then back at the altar where Vanessa stood, looking terrified. Robert Cole, Malik whispered. Vanessa's father. The cathedral was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. The cameras were flashing, capturing the look of devastation on the billionaire groom's face. Malik stood in the center of the aisle, the yellowed paper trembling in his hand. Robert Cole, the man sitting in the front row, wearing a $3,000 tuxedo. The man who had slapped Malik on the back just yesterday and welcomed him into the family. The man who was currently standing up, looking indignant and confused. Malik, Vanessa called out from the altar, her voice wavering. What is going on? Please come back here. Malik didn't answer her. He turned to Mama ESI. Is this true? I was there, Mama ESI said, her voice gaining a little strength. I was with your mother that night. We begged him. We told him she couldn't breathe. We told him her son was working double shifts and would bring the money soon. And Malik asked, his voice cold. He looked at us, Mama ESI said, pointing a shaking finger at Robert Cole. And he said this isn't charity. He said the policy was strict. $11. That was the copay for the antibiotic she needed to stabilize her breathing. We were short. We had the rest, but we were short $11. The number hit Malik like a physical blow. $11. Every morning. Every single morning she had asked him for $11. She wasn't asking for money to live. She was asking him to remember the price of his mother's life. She was forcing him to pay the debt that had killed her, over and over again, hoping he would ask why. He signed the papers. Mama ESI continued. He sent us out into the cold. She died in the taxi before we could get to the free clinic across town. Malik turned slowly toward the front row. Robert Cole was pale. He wasn't looking at Malik. He was looking at his daughter. Malik walked back toward the altar, but he didn't stop at Vanessa. He walked past her, down the steps, to where her father stood. Did you know? Malik asked, his voice low and dangerous. Malik, this is ridiculous, Robert stammered, trying to laugh it off. This is just some crazy old woman crashing a wedding. I've never seen her before in my life. Look at the paper, Robert. Malik shoved the invoice into the older man's chest. That is your signature. That is the date my mother died. Robert glanced at it and stiffened. I was an administrator for 20 years, Malik. I signed thousands of forms. I can't be expected to remember every indigent patient who couldn't pay their bills. It was policy. It was business. Business, Malik repeated. My mother was 42 years old. It was a tragedy, I'm sure, Robert said, regaining his composure. But bringing this up now, here, it's a manipulation. Vanessa, tell him. Malik turned to Vanessa. She was crying now, mascara running down her face. Malik, please. My father, he ran a strict hospital. He didn't kill your mother. The sickness did. Please, don't destroy our day over something that happened a decade ago. Did you know? Malik asked her. Vanessa hesitated, just for a second. But in that second, Malik saw the truth. You knew, he said. I knew there was a story. Vanessa sobbed. I knew your mother died at St. Andrews. I knew my dad ran it. But I didn't connect it, Malik. I swear. And even if I did, what was I supposed to do? It was the past. The past. Malik laughed, a hollow, broken sound. You told me to stop giving her money. You told me she was a leech. You knew who she was, didn't you? Vanessa went silent. She looked down at her bouquet. She told me. Mama, ESI's voice floated from the aisle. I came to your house, Vanessa, 2 months ago. I told you who I was. I told you I wanted to speak to Malik. You told security to throw me out. You threatened to have me arrested if I came near him. The crowd gasped. The image of the perfect bride shattered instantly. Malik looked at Vanessa, really looked at her, and saw a stranger. He saw someone who valued the perfect picture over the ugly truth. He saw someone who would bury his mother's memory to protect her father's reputation. Malik took off his boutonniere, a white rose, and dropped it on the floor. There is no wedding, Malik announced, his voice booming without a microphone. Go home. Malik. Vanessa screamed, grabbing his arm. You can't do this. The press is here. You will humiliate us. You humiliated yourself, Malik said, pulling away. He walked back down the aisle toward the fragile old woman who had saved him from making the biggest mistake of his life. Let's go, Andy, Malik said, offering her his arm. Mama ESI smiled, a weak, tired smile. I'm ready, son. Together, they walked out of the cathedral, leaving the billionaire bride and her father amidst the ruins of their perfect day. The photo of Malik Thorne helping an old woman out of the cathedral while his bride screamed in the background was on the cover of every newspaper the next morning. The internet was on fire. Some called Malik a hero. Others called him unstable. They called it a breakdown, a midlife crisis, a cruel stunt. But Malik wasn't reading the comments. He was sitting in a private hospital room, watching Mama ESI sleep. He had moved her to the best facility in the city. The doctors told him she had advanced heart failure. Her body was tired. The years of poverty, of stress, of carrying a secret so heavy had taken their toll. She didn't have long, maybe weeks, maybe months. Malik sat by her bed, piles of legal documents spread out on the tray table. He wasn't grieving yet. He was working. Darius. Malik said into his phone, Did you get the files? I got them. Darius's voice came through, sounding exhausted. Malik, it's worse than we thought. St. Andrews wasn't just strict. They were predatory. I found internal memos from Robert Cole's tenure. They were incentivizing staff to discharge uninsured patients early. They had a quota for rejections. A quota, Malik repeated, his blood boiling. They had a quota for rejecting dying people. Yes, and it wasn't just your mother. I found at least 50 cases in the last 10 years with similar patterns. Deaths that were preventable. People sent home with aspirin when they needed surgery. All signed off by Cole or his deputies. Bring it all to me, Malik said. We'll burn it down. Malik, Darius hesitated. Vanessa's team is fighting back. They release a statement saying you're mentally unstable. They're saying Mama ESI is a grifter who manipulated you. They're threatening to sue you for breach of promise for the wedding. This is going to get ugly. Let it get ugly, Malik said, looking at Mama ESI's peaceful face. I've been pretty for too long. The next day, Malik held a press conference. He didn't stand behind a podium. He stood on the steps of the old transit center on 5th Street, right where Mama ESI used to sit. Reporters swarmed him. Mr. Thorne, why did you leave the wedding? Is it true you're having a breakdown? Malik waited for them to quiet down. Then he held up the yellowed invoice. This is why, he said. He told the story. He didn't use PR speak. He didn't use legal jargon. He told them about the $11. He told them about the mother who died gasping for air because a billionaire administrator wanted to hit a bonus target. I am launching a class action lawsuit against St. Andrew's Medical Group and Robert Cole personally, Malik announced. And I am starting the Lena Thorne Initiative. No one in this city will ever be turned away for lack of funds again. I will pay for it. All of it. The announcement sent shockwaves through the city. Stock prices for the hospital group plummeted. Robert Cole went into hiding. But the fight wasn't easy. The hospital's lawyers were sharks. They dug into Malik's past. They dug into Mama ESI's past. They leaked stories that she had a criminal record for shoplifting. She had stolen bread once, 20 years ago. They tried to paint Malik as a man influenced by a criminal relative. One afternoon, Vanessa showed up at the hospital. Malik met her in the lobby. She looked tired, her perfect veneer cracking. You're destroying my family, Malik, she said, her voice shaking. My father is losing everything. He might go to jail. He should go to jail, Malik said calmly. He's an old man. My mother never got to be old, Malik countered. Vanessa stepped closer. If you stop this, if you drop the lawsuit, we can work this out. I still love you. We can fix the narrative. We can say it was a misunderstanding. Please, don't throw away our future for the past. Malik looked at her and felt nothing. No anger, no love, just clarity. Vanessa, he said, the future is built on the truth. If you can't stand on that, you can't stand with me. She stared at him, realizing for the first time that the man she thought she could mold was made of stone. She turned and walked away. Malik went back upstairs. Mama ESI was awake. You're making a lot of noise downstairs, she whispered, smiling weakly. I'm just cleaning house, Annie, Malik said, sitting down. Don't let the anger eat you, son, she said, reaching for his hand. Justice is good, but peace is better. I'll have peace when they answer for what they did, Malik said. Mama ESI squeezed his hand. Just make sure you don't become them while you fight them. The lawsuit moved faster than anyone expected, fueled by Malik's unlimited resources and the public outcry. Witnesses came forward, nurses who'd been afraid to speak, families who had lost loved ones. The dam broke, but as the legal battle peaked, Mama ESI began to fade. It was a Tuesday when the doctors told Malik it was time to say goodbye. Her heart was barely pumping. She was drifting in and out of consciousness. Malik canceled his meetings. He refused to leave her room. He slept in the chair next to her bed. In her lucid moments, she told him stories about his mother. She told him how Lena used to sing while she cooked, how she bragged about Malik's grades to anyone who would listen. She gave Malik back the childhood memories that grief had stolen from him. "She loved you so much," Mama ESI whispered. "She wasn't afraid to die, Malik. She was only afraid of leaving you alone." "I'm not alone," Malik said, tears streaming down his face. "I have you for a little while longer," she smiled. On Thursday, an unexpected visitor arrived. It was Darius, and he wasn't alone. Behind him stood a woman looking nervous and pale. It was a head nurse from St. Andrews, the one who had been on shift the night Lena died. "She wants to talk," Darius said. The nurse stepped forward. "Mr. Thorne," she said, her voice trembling. "I saw you on the news. I was there that night." Malik stood up. "You were?" "I wanted to help her," the nurse cried. "I tried to give her the medicine anyway. But Mr. Cole," he was standing right there, "he threatened to fire me. He threatened to revoke my license. I was a single mom. I was scared." "I don't blame you," Malik said softly. "I have something," she said. She reached into her bag and pulled out a small, leather-bound notebook. "I kept a log, a personal log, of every patient he turned away. I wrote down what he said. I wrote down the times." Malik took the notebook. It was a smoking gun. This wasn't just negligence. It was documented malice. "Why give this to me now?" Malik asked. "Because of her." The nurse looked at Mama ESI in the bed. "I saw her waiting at that bus stop once. Years ago. I knew who she was. I was too ashamed to stop. But she waited. She waited for the right time. I guess I'm done waiting too." With the nurse's diary, the case against Robert Cole was airtight. By Friday afternoon, the news broke. Robert Cole was being indicted on charges of criminal negligence and fraud. Malik read the news to Mama ESI. "We got him, Annie," he said. "He's going to face a judge. The hospital is under new management. They've already changed the intake policy." Mama ESI closed her eyes and let out a long, shuddering breath. "Good," she whispered. "The debt is paid." "You can rest now," Malik said, holding her hand. "Malik." "Yes, Annie?" "Don't build a monument," she whispered, her voice barely audible. "Build a bridge. Monuments are for looking at. Bridges are for getting people home." "I promise," Malik said. She squeezed his hand one last time, and then the squeezing stopped. The rhythm of the monitor flatlined into a steady tone. Malik Thorne, the billionaire who could buy anything in the world, sat in the silence of the hospital room and cried like a child. He had lost a wedding. He had lost a woman who raised him. And now he had lost the woman who saved him. But for the first time in his life, his heart didn't feel empty. It felt full. The funeral for ESI Freeman was not held in a cathedral with soaring arches and marble floors. It was held in the Sanctuary of Grace, a small, weathered church tucked away 3 blocks from the transit center. The paint on the walls was peeling slightly, and the wooden pews creaked every time someone shifted their weight. But the air inside felt sacred in a way the cathedral never had. It smelled of old hymnals, floor wax, and the heavy, sweet scent of lilies brought in from local gardens, not florists. And the pews were packed. There were no mayors, no senators, no tech moguls checking their watches. The people who filled the sanctuary were the invisible backbone of the city. There were street vendors who had parked their carts outside. There were bus drivers still wearing their uniforms, holding their caps in their hands. There were nurses from a night shift, their eyes heavy with fatigue, but bright with respect. These were the people who had seen Mama ESI sitting on her plastic crate day after day, year after year. To the world, she was a statistic. To them, she was a landmark. Malik Thorne sat in the front row, his hands clasped tightly in his lap. He wasn't wearing the three-piece Italian silk suit he had planned to get married in. He wore a simple black suit off the rack with a plain white shirt. Next to him sat Darius, looking uncomfortable but steadfast, the only bridge left from Malik's old life. When the choir began to sing, a rugged, soulful rendition of Amazing Grace, Malik felt a lump form in his throat that was so hard it was painful. This wasn't performance. It was a release. When it was time to speak, the pastor nodded at Malik. Malik stood up. His legs felt heavy, but his mind was clear. He walked to the pulpit, gripping the wooden edges to steady himself. He looked out at the sea of faces, strangers who felt like family. I spent my whole life trying to run away from this neighborhood, Malik began, his voice low but steady. The microphone gave a slight feedback whine, but no one flinched. I thought success meant distance. I thought if I built a tower high enough, I wouldn't have to look at the ground. I wouldn't have to see the cracks in the sidewalk or the people waiting at the bus stops. He paused, looking at the simple wooden casket adorned with a single wreath. My aunt, ESI Freeman, sat on a cold corner for months, Malik continued, his voice cracking slightly. She didn't ask for a house. She didn't ask for a car. She asked for $11. For a long time, I thought she was testing my generosity, but she wasn't. She was testing my memory. She was waiting for me to remember that the value of a human life isn't found in a bank account. It's found in what we are willing to do for each other when no one is watching. A murmur of amen rippled through the room. She told me to build a bridge, Malik said, lifting his head. She told me that monuments are for looking at, but bridges are for getting people home. I promised her I would, and I keep my promises. The weeks that followed the funeral were a blur of dismantling and rebuilding. Malik Thorne didn't just step back from his old life. He systematically took it apart. The penthouse with the panoramic view of the skyline was sold. The proceeds didn't go into an offshore account. They went into an escrow fund dedicated to construction. Darius stood with him in the empty apartment on the final day, the echo of their footsteps bouncing off the bare walls. You really sold it all, man, Darius said, shaking his head in disbelief. The art, the cars, the view. You know people think you've lost your mind, right? The business journals are calling it a mental collapse. Let them talk, Malik said, looking out the window one last time. I haven't lost my mind, Darius. I've just changed my currency. I used to trade in influence. Now I trade in impact. So what's next? Darius asked. Now, Malik said, turning away from the window. We go to work. The Lena and ESI Health Network wasn't built in a day, but it rose with a speed that defied bureaucracy. Malik used every connection he had left, every favor owed to him, to bypass red tape. He didn't build a gleaming hospital in the wealthy district. He renovated abandoned buildings in the food deserts, in the transit zones, in the places where ambulances took too long to arrive. The flagship clinic opened 6 months later on the south side. The sign above the door was modest, but the technology inside was state-of-the-art. The policy was plastered on the wall in the waiting room in bold letters. No bill. No questions. Just care. Malik was there every day. He wasn't sitting in a corner office on the top floor. He was in the hallway, talking to contractors, organizer supplies, sometimes just sitting with patients who were terrified of doctors because they had been turned away so many times before. Justice, too, came in its own time. The trial of Robert Cole was the final nail in the coffin of the old regime. The evidence from the nurse's diary was irrefutable. The jury deliberated for less than 4 hours. When the guilty verdict was read, Malik wasn't in the courtroom. He was at the clinic, holding the hand of a grandfather getting a flu shot. He saw the news on the lobby TV. He watched Robert Cole, a man who once thought he was a god, being led away in handcuffs. Vanessa Cole sent one letter. It had no return address, postmarked from somewhere in Europe. It was short. You were right. The house was built on sand. I hope you find solid ground. Malik read it once, folded it, and placed it in the shredder. He didn't hate her anymore. He just didn't need the weight of her memory. A full year passed. The seasons turned, bringing a crisp, golden autumn to the city. On the anniversary of the day, he first stopped his car for Mama ESI. Malik drove to the old transit center on 5th Street. He wasn't in a limousine. He was driving a reliable, modest sedan. He parked in a legal spot and walked to the corner. The city had changed, but the rhythm of the street remained. The buses still hissed and groaned. The commuters still looked tired. But there was a difference. The plastic crate where Mama ESI used to sit was gone. In its place, someone, Malik didn't know who, had bolted a sturdy wooden bench to the sidewalk. And on the back of the bench, painted in bright, defiant gold letters, were the words, "The waiting ends here." Malik stood by the bench, the morning wind tugging at his coat. He closed his eyes and listened. For a moment, he could almost hear her voice. "Are you sleeping well, son? Is your heart light today?" "Yes, Andy," he whispered to the wind. "My heart is light." He opened his eyes and saw her. Not Mama ESI, but a young woman sitting on the edge of the bench. She couldn't have been more than 20. She looked exhausted, her hair pulled back in a messy bun, holding a sleeping baby wrapped in a thin, worn blanket. She was digging through a diaper bag, counting out quarters with trembling hands. Malik watched her. He recognized the panic in her movements, the frantic math of survival. Bus fare or milk, diapers or bread. He stepped forward. The movement caught her eye, and she flinched, pulling the bag closer defensively. "I'm sorry," she said quickly, her voice tight. "I'm not bothering anyone. I'm just waiting till 4:02. "You're not bothering anyone," Malik said gently. He kept his distance, respecting her space. "I just noticed you seem a little short on fare." She looked down at the coins in her hand, shame flushing her cheeks. "I'm fine. I have enough." It was a lie. The same dignity that had kept Mama ESI straight-backed on her crate was living in this young mother. Malik reached into his pocket. He didn't pull out a stack of hundreds to make himself feel like a hero. He didn't want to overwhelm her. He pulled out a $20 bill. "I don't need this today," Malik said, extending his hand slowly. "And it looks like you might." The woman looked at the bill, then up at his face. She searched his eyes for judgment, for pity, for a hidden price. She found none. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Because someone did it for me once," Malik said, "and she told me to pass it on." The woman hesitated, then reached out and took the money. Her fingers brushed his, rough skin against smooth. "Thank you," she breathed. "You don't know what this means. I can get formula now." "I know," Malik said. I know exactly what it means. He didn't linger. He didn't ask for a name or wait for excessive praise. He simply nodded and turned back toward his car. As he walked away, the sun broke through the gray morning clouds, illuminating the street in a wash of pale gold. He got into his car and started the engine. He looked in the rear view mirror one last time. The young woman was standing up, hoisting the baby onto her hip and stepping onto the bus that had just arrived. She wasn't waiting anymore. She was moving. Malik put the car in drive. He had meetings to attend. He had a new site to inspect in the West District. He had a meeting with the city council about expanding the ambulance routes. There was so much work to be done, but as he merged into traffic, Malik Thorne smiled. It wasn't the practiced smile of a billionaire posing for a magazine cover. It was a genuine, easy smile of a man who finally knew who he was. He wasn't driving away from his past anymore. He was driving the bridge home. If this story touched your heart, if you believe that we are all just walking each other home, tell us in the comments what act of kindness changed your life. And don't forget to subscribe, because the world needs more stories that remind us of who we can be.